If you're an IGCSE International Math student and you're taking the 0607 paper 2 tomorrow and you're wondering what kind of question should I practice today as review for tomorrow, then this video is for you. Although I've made this video exclusively for those IGCSE International Math students who are taking the 0607 paper 2 tomorrow, this video is applicable to any IGCSE International Math student who will be taking the paper 2 at some point in time, even in May, because, as you can see, I've analyzed papers from 2021. This is the Feb-March session, the summer session, even the winter session. Okay, so October, November, all the way back to 20, and there it goes all the way down to 18. Actually, I've taken all those papers into account. So from 2018 all the way till 2021, all the variants I've analyzed, put down on this sheet, and color-coded them according to the topic, and then come up with, topically, what are the kind of questions that were asked. So everything that you're going to see today, the most likely questions, as I've called it, are actual questions that have appeared from 2018 up until 2021. So without further ado, let's just start this, because this is going to be a really long video, all right? So from number, the first topic is number. From number, there have been questions on BODMAS. They're just given an expression and you have to evaluate it according to the rules of BODMAS. The second type of question that has come is working with decimals, all right? Get comfortable with adding, subtracting, even squaring of decimals. Some questions they've also asked to find the square root of a decimal. So, so for instance, if you have to find the square root of the same number, 0.04, how do you do that? Okay, that should be 0.2. Okay, so try and do that. Sometimes even cube root. Okay, so a cube root of 0.008, that would still be 0.8. So just try and familiarize yourself with working with decimals, okay, whether it's adding, subtracting, even division of decimals, okay, even dividing decimals. Those are that's the second kind of question. Then of course, you'll always have a question on rounding off. And these are, like I said, I just pulled out from 2018 to 2021. Okay, so it's not that these questions will come tomorrow, but I'm going to be making some predictions. All right, so these are the most likely questions. Rounding off. Rounding off could be to 3SF, to 2 decimal places. Sometimes they even give you a question which you need to add, subtract, and then round off. Okay, so rounding off is something else that you should be, reviewing. Negative integers. This has also made its way, all right? So they've given this idea of negative integers. So sometimes it's about adding negative integers, subtracting negative integers, powers of negative integers, so when you're talking about multiplying 3 negative integers, the result should be negative, or if it's a cubic power of a negative integer. So negative integers, also do some practice on that, and all kinds of practice without a calculator, because this is paper 2. Then comes this very interesting question, okay? So this is going to be identify a number, or, a group of numbers. They give you a list of numbers, something like this, okay? Can you see this question? All right. They give you a list of numbers and say, identify from the list a prime number, or a common multiple of 4 and 6. And sometimes, a factor of, let's say, 48 from some list, okay? So identify a number or a set of numbers that way. Another kind of question within the same realm is a number greater than 1. The number is also both a square number and a cube number. So you got to write a possible value for this number, a number that is greater than 1, which is both a square number and a cube number. Any idea what's that number? A number that is greater than 1, that is both a square number and a cube number. 64 if you've been thinking hard, all right? So basically, I've grouped all these kinds of questions under what I've called identify numbers. So either a list is given or some kind of condition is given. One interesting question here is, can you see this part B? It says, write down a triangle number. So what is a triangle number? Actually, they're trying to figure out whether these ideas of what's a prime number, or, what are factors, what's a common multiple, those kind of ideas. So a triangle number is not a cube number. I want you to know that, okay? The general formula, or the nth term, because it's a sequence of numbers. The general term for a triangle number is n times n plus 1 over 2. So for the nth triangle number, the triangle number actually, interestingly, are the sides of an equilateral triangle, because you can't have any side possible, because it also has the restriction of the angle, 60 degrees. So a square number is a number that literally are sides of a square. A cubic number is a number that are basically sides of a cube. So a triangle number, in that sense, actually by definition, is a number that will be a possible side length of an equilateral triangle. And that's the general formula for a triangle number. And you have to find out a triangle number between 30 and 50. Just use that formula and find out. I think 36 might be a triangle number. 45 is a triangle number. You can include those. So 36 and 45. All right. I mean, one is good enough. Then inequalities. Okay. Now this is, it looks like an algebraic thing. I put it here only because you're not doing any algebraic operation here. I mean, you can even put it in the algebra section, but it's again, find the integer. So it's still under something like that because it says find integer values of x, right? So basically you're listing integers between that. So yeah, it could have been made it into algebra. Sorry if I offend anyone by that, but you're just listing integers there. In that same section, I've also included, sometimes you have to also find a fraction that satisfies an inequality. So 5 by 7 less than n less than 6 by 7. N is a fraction in this case. Okay, they said find a fraction. So be clear how you're approaching this kind of questions. Also, in the same way, write down an irrational number between 4 and 7. How do you do that? Well, root 2 is an irrational number. Root 3 is an irrational number. Pick up any irrational number, multiply it. No, so if you want to find an irrational number between 4 and 7, 4 root 2 should be an irrational number. 4 root 3 should be another irrational number. Okay, any multiple 4 times root 2, that should be an irrational number. Easy way to do that way. Fractions, that's another thing that you need to be familiarizing yourself, whether it's adding, subtracting, dividing, even mixed fractions. Okay, adding of mixed fractions. I think in one particular question, I even saw something about a cube root of a mixed fraction. Just like, this particular question, they've asked the square root of a mixed fraction. So, and they've asked, find the exact value of the mixed fraction. So what you do is I just convert it into what they call an improper fraction, vulgar fraction. This is 2, 9, 18, 18 and 7 should give you 25 over 9. And that makes it 503. Is that right? Yeah. So that should be the exact value. Don't go any further. You can just leave it there. Sometimes with fractions, they also give you kind of a word problem. This has happened only once, but I thought I'll just list, like I said, these are just the kinds of questions that have appeared from 2018 all the way till 2021. So this question says a cat eats this fraction of food each day. Work out the number of tins that are needed for a week. All right, the next thing that you need to work with is standard form. So get comfortable in working with standard form, whether it's multiplying, adding, subtracting, dividing, and reporting the answer in standard form. So be very clear on that. And I think I'm going to lay my bet on this. This is going to be the first question. I'm going to say that this question, a standard form question or working or calculations in standard form, is going to come on tomorrow's paper. Okay, that's my first prediction. Of the rest, one of these can come, the identify numbers. Let's just put my prediction there also. All right. So identify numbers, whether it's a prime number, something like a common factor or something like that. That question, that's going to be my second prediction. All right. So I'm not putting it in any particular order, but from numbers, I think my heart says that, and it's just not my heart. I've just actually, like I said, I've analyzed all these questions and I think standard form is a sure shot and something like identify a number. Moving on, ratio. You see this question quite often, okay? Dividing a certain number, one number into a certain ratio, or they've given some kind of a word problem where they said that this money, $126, is divided into 3 parts, okay? 3 shares of that ratio and find the largest share. This, I think, has happened only once. Then comes percentage, either writing a percentage as a fraction, or it comes in these forms where this resembles a selling price, cost price, profit kind of a question, but then still is under that bracket of percentage where they've given in this question, he sells, they've given the selling price, they've given the profit, and they've asked the cost price, but they've given the profit in terms of a percentage. Okay, that's why I put it there. Percentage change, that's another question you must be familiar with. This has happened many times. Should I lay my bet on percentages? Well, I'll hold my thoughts, okay? Primes. This one, yaane wala. This one is going to come. So let's, what about primes? Okay, get comfortable in writing a number as a product of primes, okay? Because sometimes what happens is that you have to use that idea to find, the highest common factor, sometimes even square root and cube root, okay? So when I say primes, I don't think I've put a question on that, but there's a lot you can do with primes. And so I'm going to lay my bet on that, whether it is coming to find, because even this HCF or LCM, that's the trick to use, okay? Write it as a product of primes and it'll be easy to find. But they've also asked questions like write 360 as a product of primes. And then they've gone on to say, find the HCF of 360 and 540, one of which is already given. And there they've also given another question that flows from there. 540 times n is a cube number. Find the smallest possible value of n. Again, making use of product of prime factors. Cool. So I put my bet on primes for tomorrow, that is. Indices, exponents. All right. They ask you questions on fractional indices. So, you need to practice on how to work out fractional indices and make use of the idea that, whichever is the simplest to go. In this case, I think 32 to the 1/5 power works faster. And then you can say that should be 2. And that's the square of 2. And so the answer should be 4. All right. So work it out which fraction. What I mean by that is if you have a number to the power of, let's say BOC, you can either write it as a to the 1c to the power of b, or you could have written it as a to the power of b to the power of 1 over c. So you work out which one is easier to work, because it's just 1 point. You don't want to waste too much time there. This is simple. All right. Again, fractional power there. So there are questions on indices and exponents. Not sure whether I should lay my bets on that. Okay. Surds, definitely I'm going to lay my bet on that, because this is another question that comes very often. I'm going to lay my bet on this question. All right. Rationalizing the denominator. I don't know how many times it comes. All right. So it was pink. Now let's just keep my predictions to pink. All right. So get comfortable again working with surds, whether it's adding, subtracting, this is just adding or simplifying. Actually, you can simplify the surds and then add it. All right. But leave it as a surd in the simplest form. Sometimes they have given you the idea to expand the bracket and then, compare both sides to figure out what this value of P and Q should be. Again, this is to expand and simplify. But this is a question that keeps coming on and on. So I think, I'm going to lay my bet on rationalizing the denominator. And surds is something that you would have seen in every paper. Okay, so the next one is speed, distance, time, or speed, time, distance, whichever you call it. This questions also come. The first one, I think in this is to find the speed. They've already given the units in meters and in seconds. The car travels at 300 meters in 20 seconds. Find the average speed, and that's simple. All right, distance over time. And the second part of the question is to convert that speed in meters per second to kilometers per hour. So that is being tested. The conversion is being tested. They also ask questions on other conversions, like money conversion came only once. Okay, but I thought I'll just put all the questions that came between that 2018 to 2021. So conversion of speed comes within a question. Money also sometimes comes within a question, but because money can involve more decimal places or more intricate calculations, especially when it comes to those exchange rates, you don't see those kind of questions more often in a non-calculated paper. Clear? But I like this question. This is the second kind of question. And I think I should lay my bet on this question. Again, in that same speed, distance, time. A van of a length. Okay, because they've asked this question in, I think, 2 or 3 times. Sometimes it's a van, sometimes it's a train. A train passes, completely passes. You need to find out. Sometimes it's to find the speed, or sometimes it's to find the time that it takes to completely pass a certain point. Sometimes it's a gate. In this case, it's a gate, all right? So the length of the gate is 1 meter. The van has a certain length. In this case, it's 9 meters. 9-meter van, 1 meter gate. And it takes 1 second for the van to completely pass the gate. And the question in this case is to find the speed of the van. And you need to give the answer in kilometers per hour. So again, there's a question where you have to find not just the speed, but then you have to convert it. And the trick is, in this particular question, I'd just say first, just draw something, draw the gate, okay? So let's say that's the gate, that represents a gate. And that's one end of the gate, that's the other end of the gate. And that is about 1 meter. In this case, it could be a station because I think, a platform, that is, okay? Platform could be a certain length. Just denote that. And then maybe, just draw the length of the van, the car, because, it has to, or the train, whatever that is. So let me just make sure that it coincides. So in order to completely pass, because this is a van, I'm going to call this point V1 and V2, so that when it completely passes, V2 should be here and V1 should be here, right? That's your V1. Is that right? So what's happened is the length of the van, I'm looking for another color, is what? 9. So that's 9 and that's 1, which means we're looking for the time, the speed or the total distance to be covered is this much, right? So that's 1 and 9. The total distance that needs to be covered is 10 meters. So 10 meters is what we're looking for. It takes 1 second for the van to completely pass the gate. Okay, so it's taking 1 second. So that means the speed is 10 meters per second. Is that right? Cool. Now, the second part, of course, is to then convert 10 meters per second to kilometers per hour, and that you can do it. So this is a good trick to know how to solve these kind of questions. And my bets on that question. This one is another on average speed. This also come, I think, twice. This kind of question has been coming in this last few years, 3-4 years that I've analyzed, where they've given two different kinds of speeds. Okay, so Erica walks 13 kilometers in 2 hours, and then she runs at a speed of 12 kilometers per hour for 45 minutes. So a fair bit of conversion to take place there. Walks 13 kilometers in 2 hours. So you might find the speed in kilometers per hour there. She then runs at a speed of 12 kilometers per hour for 45 minutes. So yeah, for a certain time period in minutes they've given. So that's why I said fair bit of conversion there. And then you are asked to find the average speed in kilometers per hour for the entire journey. So in speed distance time graph, the things that you need to review is not just about the formula, but also the conversions. Okay. And definitely this is going to be there. Okay. One of my predicted questions is this one, but who knows, they might ask some other question. But like I said, the more important thing is the conversions. The money conversions, it's come once. I mean, if it comes, it comes, but I'm not going to lay my bet on that one. Never mind. Let's move on to the next one. We've already spoken about money conversions, exchange rates. Map scales has also come once. Interesting, right? Again, I don't want to lay my bet on this question. It's just come once in these last 24, 25 papers that I've analyzed. So I'm not going to lay my bet on that, but it has come. And all that you're seeing here are the most likely questions. And we've just covered the first section on number. So if you have found any of this information helpful, please make sure that you like, share, and subscribe to this channel of mine. I'm going to move on to the next section, that is algebra, and we can continue from there. This is going to be a fairly long video, as I've cautioned you, warned you, but I hope it's helpful. The first part of algebra is expressions, where you are asked to simplify expressions, okay? Well, they are expressions with exponents in this case, and because there's a letter involved, something like X or W in this case, or there's a Y here, you're simplifying that kind of expression. I put it here rather than in the number part, okay? So that's easy. Again, that probably you had studied with exponents, but simplifying expressions, that's the first thing. Expanding brackets and simplifying, so you have to expand, multiplying term by term and do that. Factorizing, not just 3 terms. This is a quadratic factoring, but sometimes with 4 terms, grouping, and then factoring. So simplifying expressions, expanding brackets and simplifying. Sometimes it's even multiplying 2 brackets. Factorizing 4 terms or 3 terms like this quadratic, or it's just any trinomial. This is not necessarily a quadratic expression, but you can still use the same rules of quadratic factoring. Meaning you can split the middle term, all right? In this case, that's 12. And so this should be 4x squared minus 6xy plus 2xy. I'll probably need to rearrange the terms. Minus 3y squared. And then you can rearrange to get your, well, you don't need to rearrange. We can just factor it out. So this is going to be 2x. And 2x minus 3y. And then what do we have here? We can write plus y and 2x minus 3y. All right. So the factors would then be, just draw a line here. That's going to be 2x plus y and 2x minus 3y. All right. So similar kind of idea, but it's not a quadratic. Okay. Similar kind of idea. Simplifying here, and many times the factoring is about the difference of 2 squares. That's also been asked. Sometimes they've also asked an application of that with numbers. Okay, so you're using the same rule of the difference of 2 squares, a square minus b square formula. Writing as a single fraction. Okay, so something like this. This is simplifying. You've got 2 fractions, and then you are finding the common denominator and writing the as a single fraction in its simplest form. So if there are some common terms, on the numerator and the denominator, you'll have to cancel that. Okay, what's the next one? With equations. That was all about expressions, algebraic expressions. With equations, this is a sure short thing, okay? The rearranging and making the subject the formula. So either there's a formula given, this is the formula for, what is this? This is like a curved surface area, and this is looking like, for some 3D object, it looks like, I don't know, I can't identify this. 3 pi r square, so 3 circular, okay. Some area, okay, but we are asked to write H in terms of the other letters pi, R, and A. Okay, so that's rearranging the formula and making H the subject of the formula. Many times they ask X, and this is a very, I don't know, I want to lay my bet on this kind of a question. But rearrange, I think you see that in every paper. Okay, so this is one short question, and the X could be, either in the denominator or within the square root. So be careful how you rearrange to make X or any other letter. Okay, this has come also a couple of times, but I'm willing to lay my bet on, okay, this kind of question where it's X. All right, solving an equation. This was about rearranging to make the subject of the formula. The second one is solving an equation. You have linear equations. You've got a quadratic equation. You have examples of simultaneous equations. Okay, simultaneous equations. Chalo, bet lagate usi mein bhi. All right, ye bhi aane wala hai. Fractional equations also has made its way. Sometimes the fractional equation to solve is not necessarily like to find the value of x in this case. Sometimes it is to simplify and maybe write it in a certain form. Like on the right hand side, you've got it as ax over bx square minus c, and you have to identify what that the A, B, and C are based on comparing both sides. So basically, you're simplifying the left-hand side, writing it as a single fraction, but in this form. All right, so that then you can identify what's the coefficient of x, what's the coefficient of x square, and what's that constant term. Okay, and then deduce what is A, B, and C. Clear? Solving absolute value equation. All right, this has also made its way in the last few times. Okay, so I think you should be able to, when you're reviewing, you should put this thing on your review cards also. Try and solve equations with the absolute value, right? So that's about equations and expressions. Let's move on. I've excluded inequality from this because actually, according to the syllabus, inequality features in geometry. So I'm going to be talking about inequalities in that section. All right. Variation. Love. This is going to be another bet. Always comes, whether it's inversely or whether it's directly. Okay, but I think inversely is the one that comes most often, and I'm going to even bet that far and say, you know what, inverse variation kal aayega. Okay, sequences. Okay, that's another sure shot question. You'll definitely get a question on sequences where the most common thing is to find the nth term, the next term, and the general term. Okay, so the next term of that particular sequence and the general term of the sequence. Please make sure that you are checking the differences. Okay, it's not necessarily the first difference; it could be the second or the third difference. This one is very similar to the one earlier on. Why did I put this thing here? Okay, that's because of the equations. Okay, you can even find equations with exponents. All right, so you can write this one as 3 to the power of x on one side. On the other side, you can write it as 3 cube and to the power of x plus 2, so that you got 3 to the power of x is equal to 3 to the power of 3x plus 6. And then you can compare both sides. The bases are the same, so the indices must be the same. So you can say that x must be equal to 3x plus 6. And then that's just a simple linear equation to give you 2x must be equal to a negative 6. Is that right? Yep. And so x must be equal to a negative 3. All right. So that's how you do. So basically in equations, why did I put it as exponents? I should actually put it in the equations, but never mind. You know what to review for, right? So exponents, not just simplifying the exponents such as these, but also be able to solve equations with exponents. Is that it? Or is there anything else in algebra? I think the section on numbers and algebra are the longest ones. Okay, so there's a long list to review. Let's move on. Moving on to the next section is functions, and we've got a long way to go in this video. Okay, so bear with me on that. Logarithms comes under functions according to the syllabus. So the questions on logarithm is about simplifying, basically finding the value. All right, finding the value of a log. Sometimes it's an expression. Okay, so you have to simplify, and sometimes this is just one term. Sometimes it's to solve an equation with logs. Okay, again, let's lay a bet on logs. Kal log aayega hi aayega. Okay. Graphs of functions. Okay, now let's be clear on this. Okay, you in this particular question, you're given the graph, and it's the graph of a reciprocal function with some other information given to you. Okay, they've given you that 0.42, and you have to write down the equation of the graph. Okay, in this question, they've asked you to sketch the graph of 1 over x. Right. In some other question like this, they've given you the graph of this absolute value function, and using the information, there's this x-intercept and the y-intercept. You have to find the values of a and b, and this question has also come a couple of times, so I'm going to put my bet here. All right, quadratic graph. Sometimes the information given is different. In this case, they've only given the information about this turning point, and they said here that the minimum point is 2 comma negative 3. So if you were to write this quadratic as in the vertex form, all right, so if you write it in the vertex form using the idea of the vertex, the turning point, you can write it as x minus 2 the whole square minus a 3. All right, so if you were to expand this and say this is going to be x squared minus 4x plus 4 minus 3, and then x squared minus 4x plus a 1, and that you compare with this equation, and you can say clearly that b must be equal to a negative 4 and c must be equal to a 1. Okay, so questions like that, similar idea you can use for the absolute value function. What I'm trying to say is that the graphs of functions are there. This is also a cool question where you have to write down the equation of the graph. As I said, it's a transformed graph of the reciprocal graph. All right, so it's not a translation. You can see that the asymptotes have not shifted. And by the way, speaking of asymptotes, when you're sketching the graph, all right, make sure that you indicate the asymptotes also. All right, so this should be of the form y equals some a over x. And then when you just substitute, x is 4 when y is 2, 2 is equal to a over 4, the value of a must be 8. And then you can say that the equation should just be y is equal to 8 over x should be r. All right, practice these graphs, okay? And so get to know some of the basic graphs to be able to do questions such as these. So I spoke about logarithms, graphs of functions. Graphs of functions, should I lay my bet on? Yes, I'm going to lay my bet because it's really come quite a few times, and the different kinds of graphs. On one particular year, I think this is 2018, they gave these 9 graphs, okay, 9 graphs, and they had asked to, they gave these 4 different graphs and you're supposed to match them, all right? And you can see there's a fair bit of transformations that's been checked, okay? So please go over graphs and transformations of functions as part of your review. Or kuch hai yahan pe? Yeah, I already solved this thing, but I'll tell you what the question was, okay? This was the question. Although this is about sketching a sine function, I've already sketched here. They gave only the grid, okay? They gave up to 360, and so although sine should come under trig and trigonometry, the reason I put it here is because it's more of a functional kind of a question, okay? Because as you see in part B, they've said the point a comma 0.5 is on the graph. So after you sketch the graph of sine, make sure that, they've given 360. So, keep it as symmetric as you can. So go half to get 180 and then half to get 90 and then, 270. And yeah, that's a simple sine graph. But the second part says the point a comma 0.5 is on the graph. Find the 2 possible values of a, all right? So a comma 0.5. So at 0.5, when you cut and 0.5 being a positive 0.5, those are the 2 values. And from symmetry, you should be able to say that the sine of 30. And those are the things to remember. I'll talk about that when we're talking about trigonometry. So some of the basic angles, all right, the trig values of some of the basic angles, sine 30, 60, 45, all those things, even for cos and tan, please make a note of that, because otherwise you'll not be able to solve this, right? Because there are 2 values, both at 30 and at 150 due to symmetry, okay? So you should be able to write that as the answer. Yahan bhi, it's a very similar question on sine, okay? So should I lay my bet on trig functions? I don't know. Ye ek bari aaya hai. This has just come once, so I'm not sure. But definitely, as I said, a graph on, I've generalized it as graphs of functions. So who knows, it might be even a trig graph. I would request you, urge you, encourage you to just go through all the questions on graphs of functions, okay? So it should include trig graphs also, because in this question, they've asked the amplitude. Can you see that? So, and that's clear if you've done these kind of questions. The amplitude should be 3. And this is very similar to this earlier part, okay? So y is equal to f of x goes through the points 75, 1.5, a, comma 1.5. Let me do this thing for you. Even though this video is getting long, I'm going to solve this question for you, right? So it says find a possible value of a greater than 75. Can you see that? Greater than 75. So let's see how we do this. It says f of x goes through that point. So f of x is equal to 1.5. Okay. This was here, f of x was a sine equal to 1.5. Okay. And therefore we got that value of a. So what we're going to do is that we're just going to say f of x is what? 3 sine 2x. That must be equal to 1.5, right? So that clearly means that sine of 2x must be equal to 1.5 over a 3. giving us that magic number 0.5, just as we had here, right? Just as we had in this particular question. The difference is here, it's not sine x, here it's sine 2x, right? Sine 2x. That means 2x must be equal to that 30 degrees or that 150 degrees, right? The way you had here, because it's a positive value, okay? Sine is positive, that means only the first quadrant or the second quadrant. That means that values of x that are possible are 15 or 75. Now, look at the question again. It says greater than. Can you see that? Greater than 75. What does it mean? We just got values of x as 15 and 75. They want to test whether you know that the sine is a periodic function. That means it's not going to stop at 360. Na? 360 ke upar kya value hai? What's the other value? So 360 plus 30 should coincide with that 30 degrees. So the next value should have been 360 plus 30, which is 390. That means that the next value after 75 degrees would be 390 divided by 2. What does that turn out to be? 9, and is it 195? Let me just check. Yeah, so 195 degrees. Okay, let's not forget to put the degree sign there. Okay, so that should be the, it's a possible value because, it can go to the second quadrant also. So you could take a look at that value also. Okay, but the key thing was to understand that it is a periodic function. It will continue, and that's how you identify what the next value should be or would be. Clear? So those are about graphs of functions. I know this video is a pretty long video, but if you're gaining anything out of this, if you're finding this useful, please subscribe to this channel. That'll be quite encouraging for me for all the work that's put in. Finding the value of the function is pretty straightforward. You're given the function and you ask to find the value of the function at a certain point, and then to solve that f of x is equal to 5. You probably have done these questions as practice for even paper 4. So I think that's all that I have for functions. Okay, let's move on to the next one then, which is geometry. Okay, geometry, angle properties. The first one is angle properties. So different kinds of properties of angles, whether it's angles around a point adding up to 360 degrees or sometimes a line. So what we sometimes call linear pair. It doesn't have to be a pair of angles, but even a group of angles, as long as they are angles in a line. Angles within a triangle, whether it's the exterior angle property that you're going to be using. Angles within parallel lines, where's that? Here we go. Within parallel lines, so whether it's corresponding angles, alternate angles, interior angles, as in this case. Even this thing, all right, this has come many times. So my bet I'm going to lay on this question, okay? Exterior angle property, exterior angle of regular polygons, the exterior angle of a regular polygon. And so please review that exterior angle, interior angle with a number of sides. Okay, so some questions they have asked for the size, that means, the measure of one exterior angle or one interior angle given the number of sides of the polygon. And sometimes they asked for the number of sides. The n is what you need to find out, making use of the formula. And so that's question I'm going to lay my bet on, but I'm going to show you one classic question. Okay, look at this. Find my measuring. Matlab, you actually have to use your protractor. So normally they have these kind of things mentioned, right? So not to scale, all right? But this question, you actually lay down your protractor, measure the angle here, but the reflex angle is the other angle, okay, on the other side, 360 minus, okay? So I thought that was pretty cool, pretty interesting. I won't say cool, that they've basically made you measure, and the only way you can measure is using a protractor, okay? Or kya? Circle properties. Bet, chalo. All the properties, okay? Quadratic, cyclic quadrilateral. In this particular question, you're making use of the idea that the angle at the center is going to be twice the angle at the circumference that's subtended by the same arc, which means this x must be half of that, which is 70. And this then forms another cyclic quadrilateral. Okay, just keep that in mind. The vertices of the cyclic quadrilateral lie on the circumference, so that 70 and y must add up to 180. Y should be 110. And what have they asked? Yeah, they just asked the values of x and y. X must be 70. And that must be 110 because of the property of the cyclic quadrilateral. But go through all the other properties also, alternate segment theorem and all that, because this is going to be, circle properties is going to be one of them. These are not the questions, let me clarify. These are not the questions as I'm predicting. These are the type of questions, all right? Clarify. Okay. Arc length and area of a sector you probably are aware of, but remember they ask you questions with as a multiple of pi, so you're not using your calculator, so you should leave your answers as a multiple of pi. You can't go any further anyway. So arc length, and that's direct formula in this particular question. I think they've given the length of the arc, k pi r centimeters. Find the value of k. All right. So the angle is given, and making use of the idea theta over 360, and you can write k as a fraction in its simplest form. Areas and volumes of similar shapes. मन कहता है यहाँ पे bet लगा ही दूं यार. चलो लगा ही देते हैं. क्या मेरा क्या जाता है? लगा ही देते हैं. I mean, my good friend Akash Chopra, not my good friend, but I really enjoy watching his betway predictions, and he's so cool whenever he talks and predicts about the cricket games. Even when he goes wrong. So I think my encouragement comes from Akash Chopra. I don't think he ever knows me or he knows anything that there's a math teacher who watches his videos. But there's inspiration, to do this kind of a prediction. Akash Chopra ji, thank you ji. Betway. So areas and volumes of similar shapes. My bets on that. Basically, the idea is to use the what should I say? The trick is to use the idea that when you have two similar shapes, the ratio of the areas of the similar shapes are equal to the squares of the corresponding lengths. And when it comes to the volumes of similar shapes are proportional to the cubes of the corresponding lengths. Okay, so that's what you need to keep in mind when you're solving questions on areas and volumes of similar shapes. Please practice these kind of questions. Okay, I've given this whole list. I've prepared this whole list to help you prepare what kind of questions that you should be preparing for, what kind of questions should you be reviewing. In fact, if you go through these questions, just these questions, I think that should be good enough for you, all right? Symmetry, wow, acha, isme to lagaina hi padega yaar, isme to bet symmetry. You know why? I'll first go through the different kinds of questions. Sometimes they've asked you to draw the lines of symmetry, okay? So draw all the lines of symmetry for each of these shapes. There's one here, that's three here. Draw it nicely, neatly with a ruler and a pencil. Yahan dekho. Ye question, like I've not just put on symmetry, like in some questions I put it on the topic na. Yahan pe main lagaunga on the type of question. Ye dhyan do, or you have to work on this. Okay, you have to come up with. Let's read the question first. Write down the mathematical name of the quadrilateral that has rotational symmetry of order 2, but no lines of symmetry. So your review plan for today should be able to write down, for each quadrilateral, write down what are the lines of symmetry, what are the rotational symmetry if it has, what's the order of rotational symmetry, and identify them by name, the names of the quadrilateral. I think this one is a parallelogram. Then write down the mathematical name of the quadrilateral that has exactly one line of symmetry. It's a kite, right? We just saw it here, this one. Okay. Then this one is a quadrilateral has rotational symmetry of order 2, 2 lines of symmetry, and its angles are not right angles. What is the special name of this quadrilateral? Put the answer in the description, in the comments below. All right. What the answer to this one is, because as I said, this is the kind of question that is going to come in tomorrow's test. That's one of my predictions. Okay. This one was also a pretty cool question under symmetry, where they've given you squares and you're supposed to shade so that it satisfies a certain condition on symmetry. So here it is, shade 2 squares so that this shape has exactly one line of symmetry. Of course, you can have 2 possible cases, not just one definite answer, but as long as it has one line of symmetry. So one way to do this could be if you shade this one and you shade this one, the line of symmetry would be something like that. Iske beech mein se chala jayega, right? Shade 2 squares so that the shape has a rotational symmetry of order 2. So in the same way, take a good look at this question. For rotational symmetry, I have a feeling this is the one that should be shaded here, the diagonal. And if it's going this way, so this should be the other one, right? Order 2, all right? So practice symmetry. And as I said, I've already marked that as one of the things that you should be doing. Practice. Aur is pe zarur dhyan dena, ye to aane hi wala hai. Theek hai? Proofs. Can you believe this? This has come once. In fact, I should even find out and let you know where it has come. It has just come once. And I think it's a very safe question for people too, because, you're not required to use a calculator. And I'll show you, okay? So if I go back to my calculator just for a sec, and to my computer, not my calculator. If I just say, okay. And if I just say Command F to search, and let me see proof. Ye aa gaya na yahan pe dikh raha hai? Okay, statement reason. And if I just close this thing, and I'll tell you where it has come. Okay, this has come winter 1923 or 23, the third variant. Okay, so October, November 2019, the third variant, they actually asked a question on proofs, and that's interesting. So would I be willing to lay my bet on it? Nah. Lekin acha question, yeah. I mean, like I said, it's probably a great question to have for a non-calculator section paper. Those are the questions from geometry, and this video is getting longer and longer, but I hope this is useful. And if it is useful, please mention that in the comments, and do not forget to subscribe. Inequalities. Acha, like I said, inequalities, I didn't put it in the algebra section because even in the syllabus, they mentioned it in the coordinate geometry. So I've started with that inequality thing because it was missing there. This is a great question, in fact, okay, where they've given the inequality and the grid, the x and y axis, they've not mentioned any points. So the only test point, if you're using that method to figure out on which side of the line lies the inequality, like, this is less than or equal to, basically you have to write down the letter. Each letter represents a certain region, okay? So the test point you can use is origin. That's the only point you can use in this case, okay? Greater than or equal to, I think you can use any one point here, okay, assuming that to be 1, 0. But this is a great question. And what do I mean by this? These are the type of questions, not the exact questions. Inequality aayega region ka? Zarur aayega bhai. Because this has shown made its way in the recent years. And this, like I said again and again, I don't know how many times I said in this video, 2018 se main analyze kiya hu, okay? This is, like I said, this is the algebra part of the linear inequality solved, but they've asked to represent. Some questions, they also given that representation, and then you have to write down the inequality, okay? They've also asked a quadratic inequality. Can you beat that? I made a video on quadratic inequalities if you're not comfortable. Very easy here. The leading coefficient is positive, so it's going to be a concave up, and you can just label the intercepts, okay, along the x-axis. Kya hai intercepts? Intercepts are going to be -3 and 4. So -3 यहाँ पे आएगा and 4 यहाँ पे आ जाएगा. Just estimate, okay, rough. And we want it positive, which means above the x-axis. The curve is going to be above the axis for values that are before -3 or after 4. Okay, so I'm going to link that video if you do not understand a word of what I just said. So x should be less than -3 or x should be greater than 4. Okay, so that's how you solve a quadratic inequality, and it has come. So practice that, and I'm going to link that video. It might even appear at top somewhere up. Okay, it'll come, and dekh lena video, practice that, and you'll know how to do this. TK, those are about inequalities. And then in coordinate geometry, you also have questions where you have to find the midpoint using the midpoint. Length of that segment joining those 2 points, that is distance formula. What is this? The line is given. They've given you a line and you have to write in the equation of the line. Dekh ke likhna hai, the equation of line L. Oh, this is the vertical line L. Okay. X is equal to -3. Then write down the coordinates of the point of intersection. Okay. So you just work it out just by, it's about reading graphs, I think. But this comes under coordinate geometry, and then finding the gradient. So is that it? Is there anything else? So just go with these kind of questions. ठीक है? ये क्या है यहाँ पे? The points A and B are shown in the diagram. Find the equation of the perpendicular bisector. Equation of perpendicular bisector, whether it's given in this form or just given in the words. Words meaning, they've said find the equation of a line that's perpendicular to this line, passes to the point, comes so often. I am willing to lay my bet on this question. Okay, this kind of question, which is talking about perpendicular bisector. Okay, may not necessarily be like the grid is given. They're not necessarily given that way, but at least through the words. But perpendicular bisector equation, मेरा bet है उस पे भाई. I think that is about it for coordinate geometry. Moving on. Mensuration. Again, most of the questions in mensuration, you have to leave it as a multiple of pi, as an exact value. So they've asked questions on find the volume of a cone, given other dimensions. They've even asked questions with, compound geometric shape or a 3D shape. This question is where they've given a hemisphere that is joined to a cone. The hemisphere has radius 3 centimeters, and they've asked to find the value of k, where the total volume of the shape is k pi. All right, so basically you're adding the volume of the hemisphere and the volume of the cone, equating it to k pi, and then finding the value of k. All right, in terms of pi, of course. और क्या है? Is that it? Yeah, mensuration में ज़्यादा नहीं है, but don't ignore it. Every section is represented. Every section means number, algebra, functions, and coordinate geometry, so on and so forth. Let's come to vectors and transformations. Transformations will not come. ये मेरा prediction ही समझ लो, ठीक है? कभी आया नहीं transformation के बारे में. But they've actually used the function का transformation, not vector का transformation. You know that I showed you already. So they've used it in that sense. But the kind of questions to expect from vectors and that you should practice are these kind of examples where, you know, the vector is given in, two vectors are given in column form. It's either adding, subtracting, and sometimes it's a, you know, a scalar multiple of two vectors. And sometimes it's about this, you know, finding the coordinates of, let's say, one of the endpoints. In this particular question, it says A is the point 2, 7, and the point A is translated to the point B. Point A is translated to the point B by the vector P bar plus Q bar. Okay, so translated, that is a transformation. Nah? So what I actually meant by that is not about, you know, the drawing, the thing. Translated means dhyan mein aaya ki actually that's a transformation. But chalo, पूछ ही लिया हम लोगों ने. So P bar plus Q bar, you're using the result from there. P bar plus Q bar should be equal to, and please, if you're writing this, especially in paper 4, make sure that you're writing the bar. We have to do some kind of review for, I'll announce that, okay, for paper 4, where the notations will be important. Okay, P bar plus Q bar is 4, and -1 and -2 should be -3. That's P bar plus Q bar. So the point 2, 7 is translated using that vector. So A, which has coordinates 2, 7, will become what? The translation is 4, so it will be 2 plus 4. I'll write it as that, 2 plus 4, 7 minus 3. All right, so the coordinates of B then would just be 6, 4. Okay? All right, moving on. What other kind of questions? Again, they've given that vector, and that's a scalar multiple, as I said. Absolute value, not absolute value, sorry, magnitude of a vector. So there's definitely going to be a question on vectors. And like I said, every section is represented on your paper. My bet on vectors is this magnitude. Okay, so my bet is going to be on magnitude because it's come always. So no matter what the question is, whether it's adding or subtracting the vectors that's given in column form, ये तो part B में आने वाला है. All right, so those are the only types of questions from vectors, as I said. All right, so that's it. Moving on to trigonometry. इस पे ध्यान देना. Okay, all right. The basic trig values, you know what table होता है? That sine of 30, cosine of 30, 60, 45. Ratta maro, yaad rakho. All right, this is not the time. I mean, I have made some videos on trigonometry, but I don't want to link that right now. You know, but just do something, but get the basic measures, okay, for sine, cos, and tangent. All right, 30, 60, 45, 90. All right, that is one thing that you need to keep in mind along with, I'm coming to that, okay, so pay attention to this part. Look at this triangle, okay, so obviously using the idea of tan of 30, so you need to know tan 30. You're not using the calculator here, right? So you need to know what is tan 30, all right? Write it as a ratio and then find the value of k, all right? So remember what tan 30 is, okay, along with the others. In this particular case, it is the length of the three right-angled, length of the sides of the right-angled triangle is given to you, and they're saying find the tan or the tangent of the smallest angle. Which one is the smallest angle? Side length ito diya hai. If you know, put it in the comments below. I want to encourage people to, you know, comment on my video. कभी-कभी बुरा लगता है यार कोई लिखता नहीं है तो. Anyway, write down how you're going to solve this, okay? And even if you don't know how to solve this, just write it down. मैं वहाँ पे hint दे देता हूँ, okay? So that's a question that's come. This is what I want to pay attention, and this is where I'm going to lay my bet, okay? Not this, I'm talking about the type of question. And what I mean by that is, pay attention to this question. It says alpha is an acute angle. Alpha is acute, and tan of alpha is equal to x, right? Alpha is acute, and tan of alpha is x. Find in terms of x, tan of 180 minus alpha, tan of 90 minus alpha. So as you're reviewing for trigonometry, remember that you need to commit to memory the basic angles, the trig values for the basic angles, sine 30, 60, 45, 90, even if you want 270 and 360, go ahead and do that. But commit to memory, because along with that, you need to know something called the symmetry of trig ratios. Okay, so I'll just put it down here. If you know, that's great. So it's sine of 90 minus theta. Theta being an acute angle, all right, is cosine of 30, and cosine of 90 minus theta would be sine of theta. Tan of 90 minus theta is actually cotangent, but cotangent, that term is not there in the IGCSE 0607. We'll write it as 1 over tan. Okay. But they've also asked 180, right? So 180 minus theta, let's just write that one also here. Okay, so I'll write that here as sine of 180 minus theta is going to be equal to sine theta. That's the idea that we used in that graph. Remember that functions question. Okay, that's why if sine 30 degrees was also equal to sine 150 because of this relationship. Okay, the symmetry of the trig ratios. Cosine of 180 minus theta would be equal to a negative cos theta, and tan of 180 minus theta, that is also equal to a negative tan theta. So these are the ideas if you can remember along with those basic values which I already told you, and then you'll be able to solve questions like this. So when they said that tan of alpha is equal to x, find out tan of 180 minus alpha. Well, we just noted that tan of 180 minus alpha, whatever the angle is, should be negative tan alpha. And tan alpha is x, so this is negative x. All right? Likewise, tan of 90 minus alpha, we have noted as 1 over tan cotangent. So 1 over tan alpha. All right? And tan alpha is x, so this is just going to be 1 over x. You can leave it as 1 over x. Okay? What are these questions now? Sine of x is equal to half, and for x between 0 and 90, you got to solve that equation. Okay, so the simple trig value, again, if you can recall from that table that the x, because it's an acute angle, x must be 30 degrees. Right? However, for a negative value, if you know that sine is negative in the third and the fourth quadrant, right, calculate the values of the sines. So obviously 30 and 150, the other angles should be 210 and 330 degrees. Okay, by symmetry. So by symmetry, you can say because it's negative, sine is negative in the third and the fourth quadrant. They could even ask a similar question for tan and for or for cosine. Okay, but I've not seen that. I've just seen these kind of questions. If it was there, I'd have told you. So while you're reviewing this kind of idea, like I said, this is a basic question, but overall, you need to know those basic values. Okay, the 30 degrees, 45 degrees, that table that's there for basic trig values. Along with that, you also should know this idea of symmetry of angles. Then you'll be able to solve these kind of questions. And I'm going to lay my bet on this kind of a question. It may be sine, it may be for cosine, or it may be for tan. Or kya? Bearings. The bearing of a point B from a point A is 234. Work out the bearing of a point A from point B. That should be pretty straightforward. You probably have already practiced this kind of question for paper 4. I'm not going to go through this. You know, cosine rule has come once. Using the cosine rule to find, and they said, you know, not find x, because of course you have to use, you know, the cosine rule में square root आता है, and they just said leave it as x square. Okay. My prediction is no. एक बार आ चुका है, लेकिन as I said many times before in this video that I have only put the type of questions. So if you want to make a thorough revision, just do these questions. ये question को ना एक बार दो बार बस देख लेना and set. All right. All right. Set. Speaking of set, the next one is sets. Chalo. Practice shading the region. All right, practice. Okay, so it's not this kind of question, but so if it's given, if the information is given in some kind of set notation, okay, shading the correct region, you know, complement of a region, and you know, multiple level of, sometimes it's very complex. Okay, but practice that. This question is going to come. एक ही question आता है भाई, and every section is going to be there. So इस पे तो bet लगाना ही चाहिए. All right, so that's just common sense. So there will be a question on sets, and in sets they're only going to ask Venn diagrams, shading the Venn diagram. Or finding the number of elements within a certain, you know, intersection ho, ya whatever they've given in set notation, or it's about describing. Use set notation to describe. Okay, how do you describe using set notation? Is it the shaded region in this case? The shaded region. So practice this. Okay, this is the only thing. Sure, short question hai. मैंने predict भी तो कर लिया है. All right. Probability and statistics are the last two things. Probability mein, this question is a very standard question on probability. They've, you know, the information whether it's about balls or whether it's about discs, and find the probability that the ball is red. Very standard question. I'm not going to lay my bet on that. They have asked this kind of question also, where it's probability, in this case, is it a replacement, or sometimes it's with replacement and sometimes it's without a replacement. So it says John takes a ball out of the bag at random. John records the color and puts the ball back in the bag. Replacement ho gaya. Flavia takes a ball out of the bag at random and records the color. So this is a question with replacement. Sometimes it's without replacement. Okay, so the ball has been taken and put back into the bag. That's replacement. And sometimes the ball has been taken on John, उठा के लेके चला गया. and Flavia बिचारी बाकी के balls से उसको we have to figure out, find out the probability that both the balls are red. And so that's the kind of condition, whether it's both is red or one is red and one is blue, or so that kind of question. And I think if at all there's a let's just put my bets, okay? I'll put a question mark on this, not certain, question mark, because I'm coming to that, okay? ये question को बाद में देखते हैं. There's also been a question on expected number. All right. So please review expected number also. Okay. So expected number is of course a number, not a fraction, not less than one, like probability. In most of the other questions, it's about find the probability. Find the probability. It's a number less than one. It's a fraction or a decimal. But in this case, expected number is you're just going to be multiplying kitna hua, how many trains. It says the number of trains in one day is 72 and the probability is given as 708. Any train departs at that time. It's just about multiplying and finding out what's the number of trains that's going to depart on time. But I'm going to come to that question later because my bet is on this question. बाद में, all right? पहला बाकी का देख लेते हैं. They have also asked questions on tree diagram to complete the tree diagram. This has come, and the probability that so of course using the tree diagram to answer this question. कुछ और है यहाँ पे? नहीं ना? But the question that has made its appearance so many times is a question on relative frequency, and I want you to take a look at this question very clearly. Solve examples like this. I'm not saying ignore the other questions, but मुझे तो लग रहा है ये क्वेश्चन आने वाला है कल. ये मतलब ये टाइप का क्वेश्चन, not exactly this question, all right? So questions on relative frequency and explaining why it is reasonable. Exact template है. I mean, I can't tell you how many times this question has, I mean, काफी बार दिखाई देता हूँ यार. मतलब अभी इतना लंबा वीडियो, अगर if anyone has been watching it for so long, you might as well see this one also, okay? So here we go. I'm going to just share. Should I just say relative frequency? Let me see what shows up. Relative frequency. ENCY 7 out of 7. अच्छा 7 बार आ चुका है. Wow. Okay. The color code that I had given is this, strange, whatever that color is, yellowish brown or whatever. Can you see that? ये एक बार. Okay. Then if I go up, find the relative frequency, explain why it is reasonable. Similar format, na? Similar format. Then if I go up, is this the next one? I don't know where it's going, but you can see it's come 7 times. Okay, I can even tell you. I mean, मजा आ गया लेकिन बहुत time लगा. Okay, so I can even tell which year that those kind of questions have come. But then let's get back to our. Let's not lose focus. This question is going to come. So practice these kind of questions where it's about relative frequency, and then the spinners spun 3,000 times and finding the expected value. So these are the 3. Sub questions or sub parts of that kind of question which comes on relative frequency. Definitely coming tomorrow for your paper. The last thing is statistics. Taiyar ho? Last thing. Such a long video. Thank you for bearing with me. Anyone is watching this up until this minute, okay? First, we'll talk about the diagrams, okay? So there's been a question on pie chart, okay? The diagrams are, charts. Pie chart, say you have to write down the information. Reading a pie chart, there's been a question on that. There have been questions on drawing the stem and leaf diagram. So given the data, you have to draw the stem and leaf diagram. एक तो diagram आने वाला है. Whether it is stem and leaf, whether it is, this is stem and leaf, whether it's pie chart, whether it is a histogram. This is to complete the histogram. So there's an incomplete histogram given, and keep in mind that it's frequency density on the y-axis, okay? And so although the table is a frequency distribution, that is an unknown value there. So you got to complete the histogram based on the information that's given, and then you got to find the value of P. So this is also a very interesting question, has made itself many times. It's appeared. So that's a diagram. ये भी बहुत बढ़िया question है, bar chart, and it's a compound bar chart. Okay, this has come at least twice, I think. So एक तो diagram आने वाला है. I don't know. I don't favor anyone. Stem and leaf पे दिल करता है to put my bet. But एक तो diagram आएगा, please just review these diagrams. But diagrams, if I say my bet is on diagrams, let me write it in pink. Diagrams or charts, whichever one. Whether it's a pie chart, stem and leaf, compound bar chart. Oh yeah. And I'm talking about actually where you are involved in sketching or you are involved in drawing or interpreting. Cumulative frequency curve. There have been questions. See, this was the question on estimating the... There has been a question on cumulative frequency curve also. Okay, I didn't put it here, but I've seen a question on cumulative frequency curve where you have to estimate the interquartile range. Mean. This is a... लगता है ये question आ सकता है. So let's put, I've put two questions of the same kind, and I'll show how to solve that, where what they've done is that rather than giving a list of values, like, this is a distribution that's given, frequency distribution, estimating the mean, how to do that, right? Finding the midpoint and multiplying it by the frequency and then dividing it by the total number of plants, which is 100 given here. And you can find the mean that way. This is, but here, this is an interesting way of giving the mean or asking for a question using the mean. They said 5 numbers have mean 12. When a sixth number is included, the mean is 9. Work out the sixth number. Or they've given a question like, the mean of 5 numbers is 12. Oh, acha. The mean of 3 of these numbers is 8. Find the mean of the other 2 numbers. So let me just solve one of them. But, one of these kind of questions. But this kind of question, what I mean by that, they've given the mean, some information about a mean, or to score, whether 2 is added or 1 is removed. Let's just do one of this. Okay, so 5 numbers, right? So if I call the 5 numbers x1, x2, x3, x4, and x5, and when you divide them by 5 after adding them, that's how the mean is described. You write it as a sum of those 5 numbers. Okay, so basically what you'll have is x1, x2, x3, x4 plus x5 is equal to 60, and they're saying the mean of 3 of these numbers is 8. Which means let's do that separately. So in the same way, I can say any 3 now, just say x1, x2, x3 over 3 should be 8, giving you x1 plus x2 plus x3 should be 24, right? So ye 3 ban gaya 24. So you have 24 plus x4 plus x5 is your 60. Is it right? And they said, find the mean of the other 2 numbers. Find the mean of the other 2 numbers means if you're taking these 3, those are the other 2 numbers, right? So that should be simple from here. x4 plus x5 is 60 minus 24. That is 36. All right. So then the mean should be x4 plus x5 over 2. That is 36 over 2, which is 18. Okay. So that's the way to approach this question. Basically, write it as this form, and then basically it'll be in terms of the sum, and then, whether it's adding or subtracting, you can do that, but practice this. This is definitely going to come. So I guess that's about it for statistics. And like I say, I've not included that one question on cumulative frequency curve, but diagrams to IGA, whether cumulative frequency will come or not, I don't want to lay my bet on that. I just put diagrams. I feel that cumulative frequency curve will not come, which is why I think, I've even ignored it. But definitely this question, which I said, ye to zarur aane wala hai, is a type of question. Cool. So that's all the type of questions from winter 2018, all the way across for this 4 years up until winter 2021. I've put it all up here. Go through all these questions one by one. These type of questions, okay? And remember, relax, okay? Relax. Don't get stressed. I thought I'll put this video. Yes, it's been a long video, but if it's been helpful to you, please subscribe and mention in the comments how your exam went, or if any of my predictions even were untrue, mention that as well. All right. All the best for tomorrow's paper.